This is YG TV and YG Roundtable built by Weiss. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Today, I'm leading a discussion on the art of the close. Let's go. YG Roundtable, built by Weiss, is a place to explore big ideas, challenge conventional thinking, and stay in touch with trends. For more content shaking up the business industry, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm bringing together subject matter experts to share their thoughts. Today, we're talking about the art of the close. Let's get into it. So what I find is like almost every show like this does an episode on sales. Hey, let's talk about sales because it makes the world go round. What's the saying? Like, nothing happens until something is sold, right?
Right.
But for the folks that watch YG TV, I wanted to try and have a sales discussion that was a little more purposeful, something that was a little more narrow. So today I want to talk about the art of the close. What happens from an interested customer to their name on the dotted line? And that's why I have you two here, because you two have this terrific background of teaching and speaking and training and hiring salespeople. I mean, you two have done it all, but you do it in different capacities and with different points of view. So I think today could be a really great discussion for someone that's watching because they might pick up a few tips and tricks on how to close more deals. So let's start with you, Ashley. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you think about sales and how you help people.
Sure. So I have a long sales history, but mostly in technical consulting sales. Since about 2008, I've been working in a pretty narrow sector, but always service-based and always 4, 5, 6, or 7-figure deals.
Big deals.
Big deals.
Which is a different style of selling than maybe someone that's selling little deals.
Much different,
right?
much different.
So that point of view is going to be really valuable during this discussion. So Tony, tell us about your background and who you help when it comes to improving their sales.
So I've cut my teeth on many different types of sales processes and products and I started almost 24 years ago. I know I'm looking on. Everything from product sales to health club sales to advertising and also to technology sales.
Wow, that's a lot of different styles of sales. So you've lived a lot of the different styles that are out there.
Even door-to-door selling.
For real?
For real.
When you said health club sales and advertising sales, then you add door-to-door sales. So you've heard the word no a lot.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
And you lived to tell about it.
I did.
Right?
Yeah.
So I want to break the episode down into two different parts. I want to talk about habits and then maybe tactics, because it seems like great salespeople have this, I don't know, a mindset about them. Is that true? Like, do you have to have your head in the right place to be a great seller?
I think if we're talking about like aggressive prospectors, for instance, sometimes people refer to them as hunters. That is a very specific, like you have to be in the mood to hunt. And people that sat by me used to joke that when I was in hunting mode, you could pull the chair out and I would still be exactly in the same position.
Yeah.
But to be in sales in general, you have to certainly be positive and upbeat and willing to take rejection after rejection after rejection and still approach it as if it were the first one of the day.
Yeah. And hunting mode, what does that mindset feel like to you when you're in hunting? I've never heard that before. What does hunting mode mean?
It's fun. This is where you meet new people and you're adding new people to your book of business. And certainly once you have someone in your sphere, you can nurture that relationship, but sort of finding interesting and creative ways to get in front of people, especially in 2020, requires a lot of creativity.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about mindset from your point of view. Is it a mindset that a salesperson has to be in to try and grow their book?
Absolutely.
So what does that mean in your case?
It's an inside-outside job. Like the toughest door to open is usually your own when you're in like outside sales. And what I mean by that is, like you said, I have to forget the last no. It's like a quarterback. You go ahead and like erase your mind of that last interception. You have to do that in sales.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you constantly have to grow yourself because your income will never outpace your own personal growth.
Your income will never outpace your own personal growth. How do you learn to take no that much? Because I'm not a salesperson, and I cannot conceive hearing no that often and just plodding ahead. How do you train people to take no that often?
Well, I would say you are a salesperson because you are married.
Oh.
You had to convince someone to spend the rest of their life with you.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we all are in sales. We're all influencing someone each and every day.
Right.
You know, so that's what I think when it comes to that sales. And how do you get to that point, and how do you overcome that no? I don't know if everyone gets through it. Even today, I still don't like no.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I should admit this, but I literally was on a prospecting session and had a prospect hang up the phone on me. I'm like, oh no, you didn't. You just hung up the phone on me. You know, it still affects me. I don't think you ever really get over it.
Yeah.
It's just you learn how to handle it better.
We're just getting started. Let's take a quick break and come back for more with Tony Jalan and Ashley Quinto Powell. This episode of YG Roundtable, built by Max Weiss, is sponsored by Health Payment Systems.
Max Weiss is a company that does it right the first time. A company that sets the curve in excellence. Rolled, curved, formed, forged, fabricated. A company that delivers on time. A company that drives innovation forward. A company that has satisfied customers for over 75 years. Anything metal, Max Weiss Company. Call or visit us online to learn more about Max Weiss Company.
For more than 80% of families, today's medical billing practices are confusing. At HPS, our goal is to improve the healthcare experience for the patient by making medical bill payments less stressful. In Wisconsin, that's all made possible by our comprehensive independent healthcare provider network. We simplify billing and lower costs for everyone involved in healthcare and offer various ways for individuals to pay without breaking the bank.
Yeah, but that's the thing about sales, right? Is that, sales is great because I'll make a lot of money, but hearing no a lot scares the heck out of me. How do you help people get over the word no? Because it's terrifying. To a non-seller like me, it's like, I could never do that.
Sure. Well, actually, I often say, like, listen, we're not dating. Like, I'm gonna ask a lot of people, like, let's go to coffee. And if they say no, it's okay. I'm not personally being rejected. I think there are some things that you can do also in the way that you approach people. I like to say that, listen, if you have really done your due diligence and crafted a pitch about why you should come to coffee with me, if I have done my job and really crafted a respectful, interesting, interested call to coffee with me, if you say no, that means that you're a jerk, not that I was too persistent. So, you know, if I say, hey, Pat, I am so interested in the work that you're doing, and I would love to just pick your brain about what it means to be an idea coach and what's going on with Young Guns Television, like, come to coffee with me. Okay, if you say no to that, at some point, I'm Taylor Swift and you're Kanye West. Like, it no longer matters that you've said that you've rejected me. Like, at some point, you're just a jerk. So if you can get yourself to that point and really believing, listen, I'm an interesting person, I'm gonna invite you to coffee, you can do that quite a lot of times and not have it feel so bad. I mean, at some point, you're just a very nice, interesting person looking to get together and talk about business. Again, we're not dating. You should want to get together with me.
You said I'm Kanye West. I get that a lot.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
totally see
all,
that.
all the time.
All the time.
Trust me. So is research a way to help someone get over to no? Because you mentioned if you know about their business and you have a compelling reason to reach out to them and get together for coffee, is that a way you can insulate yourself against the no click? Because you know, like, you're justified to make the call, like you've done your homework.
I agree. That preparation is important in developing that mindset. It's like you're not going to jump into a plane without charting your course. The same thing happens in sales. If I go ahead and click into that mindset, okay, I know the value that I'm going to bring this person. I know how they can benefit from that value, and really crafting my message, I can control that. And like you said, if they're not interested, it's like the server that comes to your table, she asks you for ketchup, and you say no, she doesn't go in the corner and start crying about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because she knows she's offering you something to go ahead and make your world a better place. So I think if you prepare yourself in terms of researching the client, understanding, what's going on in their world, you can reduce the risk of getting no. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does. And you talk about going in the corner and crying. I mean, you must have seen me try and make some sales before. So let's continue on this mindset thing, because I think people that aren't in sales may think, I'm here to sell something. But I've heard some sales coaches and sales experts say, you're not selling something, you're solving something. Is that true?
Yes. If you have the mindset that I'm a problem solver, it changes it, right? If I'm going in there, I'm going to try to sell you something, one, I'm making it about me, which usually gets in the way of things.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm also like, what can I do to go ahead and solve the problems that are going on in Pat's world? I have a different come from. I feel like I even give a different energy out when I do that.
Mm-hmm. And is that the way you would look at it too? Is that it's problem solving, not just selling, or do you think about it in a slightly different way?
I do think about it in a slightly different way. And actually, I'd love to go back to research a little bit, because I think research is a big old crutch. I think people spend way too much time diligently researching only to not have it work out. I think your better bet is to put out as many, if you can put out as many asks as possible, rather than spending time researching. So to that end, I tend to bristle when folks go into something believing that they already understand that there is a problem and then what that problem is. You see, I brought it back.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really slick right there. Yeah.
Thanks. Because I think people will only want to share with you sort of what they consent to share, and I believe you're building through the sales process. You're always focused on building trust, and so usually what I'll say is something like, I solve problems for people who X, Y, Z. And I allow them to self-select into, oh, actually, that's something I'm solving. Can you tell me more about that? And when they've self-selected in, they're less likely to reject you. They've made the decision. I think the way that modern sales happen has more to do with somebody resisting being sold always, and needing to make the decision that we're going to have a business conversation now.
So it's staying in front of them long enough until they almost opt into a solution that you have to provide. Am I hearing that right? Because they don't want to be sold, but they want the solution when they need the solution. So they need to know that that's a problem that you solve. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
See, that sounds different to me than when I think of traditional sales, which is very outbound focused of, I need your attention. It sounds like it's more, these are the problems that I solve, and talk to as many people as possible. So when they have that problem, they think of you. It's top of mind awareness, not outbound calling.
Right. Well, I think things have changed really drastically. And I often talk about this. I'm the 5th generation salesperson in my family. And my grandfathers were doing door-to-door sales. I started a big chunk of my sales career doing enterprise telesales. And I think both of those modes are dead. I can't imagine what would happen if someone came to my door. We would call the police.
Yeah,
right.
Why are you knocking at my door? Yeah.
Who are you? And no one calls me anymore except Walgreens and my mother.
Right.
Both of which have left messages, and now voicemail is full, and I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to do it differently.
So to get to, I have a solution for the person that reaches out to me, you have to do a good job of listening when people are reaching out to you. So how do you coach your sales folks on listening? Is it one of those essential skills?
Well, the first thing I tell them is before you can influence anyone, you have to understand and appreciate their world first. So be quick to listen and slow to speak. That's one of the biggest things we talk about often.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes people will tell you exactly what you need to tell them in order to help them.
Yeah.
So it comes down to asking good questions, because the answers, in my opinion, is always in the question. So if you learn how to ask better questions, you can have a better understanding of what that person needs. An example would be think about that one doctor you've gone to that you have the utmost respect for versus the doctor you went to that you're like, I didn't like them at all. Well, what was the difference? More than likely, the doctor that you liked took their time with you. They asked you a lot of questions. They diagnosed what was going on versus the other doctor. And I've literally had this situation once where the complete office was these awards of how many patients were seen in a day. And I literally went, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
So I think first, you got to make it about them. Really try to understand their world first. And then ask them, like, if I'm sitting down with you, this is going to someone to the tactical side is, you know, after I've set the stage for that meeting, what's the outcome you want to get out of this meeting?
Yeah.
And I call that one of my power questions. And it blows people away all the time when they're asked that.
You can't say I've got power questions and not share. I go, come on, what do you mean power questions for those uninitiated sales folks? What are you talking about?
So I have basically 6 questions I ask almost every meeting. And again, it's the goal of it is to understand and appreciate their world. Because like you said, a lot of times we can go into these meetings with these preconceived notions of how we're going to help them. And it almost blocks us from the opportunity to truly help them. So one of the questions I ask people is, I'm just curious, why did you agree to sit down and talk? And then they'll tell me. The second part of the question I would ask, okay, so based off that, Pat, what's the outcome you want to get out of this meeting? I've literally seen people that had their arms crossed, their eyes crossed, their legs crossed, completely open up. And all I did then was grab my notebook and just taking notes.
And once you get them talking, they'll identify what the solution is that you can provide for them. Is that along the lines of what you would advocate as well? Is that these questions will get people talking so they can walk themselves into what you have to sell?
Yeah, I think starting a conversation with big open-ended questions and then narrowing down is a really great way to go, and also allowing someone to drive the conversation. I think one of the problems that most people have with salespeople is that we have a really bad reputation for being really cheesy and for talking over people. I remember I was on my way to a breakfast meeting of the highest ranking salespeople in Chicago's software as a service companies, and the person in front of me at the valet got up to the valet and said hi, I'm here for that. And I was like, I know exactly what you're here for. This is disappointing. We're used to that. We're used to thinking that that if you sit down with a salesperson, it's going to be uncomfortable and they won't take no, and for a good reason. I mean, if you look at some of the sales training that's out there, it's like pain funnels, or the pain question funnel is when that's an actual thing where we take someone through the pain, and or we could just be reasonable human beings.
Yeah. One thing I've seen you say on social media before, and I want to dig in on a little bit though, is that if you're a salesperson, sometimes, or at least when I think of sales, I don't feel as empowered as I could be, but you talk about being an advocate if you're a salesperson, a self-advocate. So how do you advocate for yourself without being that guy at the valet that's blowing people out of the water and walking them through pain funnels? Can you share some of your thoughts on that?
Sure, and actually where that self-advocacy bend comes from is that I speak on salary negotiation, and I speak on executive and working motherhood, and I believe that to be successful at all of those, you need to be a good self-advocate, and that is just different than being a blowhard. It's just being an assertive person, and I guess. I work with a lot of CEO founders, and these people did not found their company in order to be a salesperson. But as it turns out, CEO is a sales position.
Yeah.
And especially if you have employees, but either way, you have a family that you need to support, you have a mortgage that you need to support. Your ability to sell that will mean that your company can grow and thrive, that the people who work for you can start having children and start getting married because of the stability that they find in your company that comes from your sales practice. So that's less about being so cheesy and goading someone into buying the thing, and more about, hey, I am building something really great for the world, and I think you'd benefit from it, but I don't know until I talk to you a little bit more. Anyway.
And that's some confidence that comes from believing in your product and knowing that you have a solution for them that will help them?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about building credibility. How do you go about building credibility? Because we're going to turn in a second to talk about the tactics that it takes to go from interest to close. But I think one other thing that is in this squishy habits and behaviors part is that personal credibility. You were talking about being a good self-advocate. What else is necessary to build credibility to get them set to say yes to you?
It's how you show up. I think that's part of it. Are you showing up organized or are you scattered? Like we showed up earlier to this meeting.
Yep.
I think also having some understanding of their business, of some things that you notice. And I'm not talking the good old picture on the wall, oh, I like to see golf and stuff like that. And also just understanding, what you do and why you do it. I think it just comes across in terms of your conviction on things. Also, in terms of credibility, if you're running a meeting, I think it's important to set the agenda. Because I think sometimes people come into a sales meeting and the person across the table doesn't know where they're going. If I'm going to come into that sales meeting, I'm going to set an agenda for the call. Like, what's my goals I want to get out of this call? And based off my goals, what do you want to get out of the call? And have a clear roadmap for where we're going. So now there's less uncertainty. And if there's less uncertainty, their wall comes down.
And as someone that gets sold to, we appreciate that. So thank you for advocating that. Before we move on to some of the tactics, are there any other golden rules for salespeople? Like you mentioned, hey, we both got here 15 minutes early because we're good salespeople. Is there anything else that comes to mind about good habits or do's and don'ts, like things that like maybe a pet peeve for you that you advocate for salespeople?
Well, it's hard because the minute something is successful in sales, it gets copied until it's overblown.
Yeah, right.
A really good example of that is if you call someone and the first thing out of your mouth is, "How are you today?" And the reason that and I talk about this all the time, the reason that salespeople do that is because the American Cancer Society decades ago did a study where they called households, and the ones that they said, "How are you today?" Gave more money at the ask at the end of the call to the American Cancer Society because people felt a little bad about having said, "Oh, I'm great," and then callers says, "Well, I mean, people with cancer or not, would you like to donate some money?" So salespeople heard this and then understood that they were always supposed to ask, "How are you today?" because it would lead to a better outcome. Today, I believe that when you hear, "How are you today?" you think, ugh, sales call, and you tense. And so I, for years, have told people, absolutely do not start with that. I mean, give it a try. I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm not.
Yeah.
It's awful. And so I think to that end, we have to be really nimble because things get used and abused. And there's a guy out of Chicago who created something called the Agogi sequence, which is it's something. So it is a tactic for how many calls and emails you'll do, how many it goes. It's like 15 or 17 steps, and it is first you call and leave a message, then you send an email, then you connect on LinkedIn, then you send a message, then you call and do not leave a message, then you send another email that's a reply to the first one. Right, and so it goes on for 15 or 17 steps. So our buyers are getting pummeled by that, and a lot of people follow that particular sequence because it was successful at first. I'm not sure that it's successful today because I imagine that people are being beaten into the ground by this Agogi sequence. But it's worth being really aware of what's happening in the world and how pummeled your potential clients are.
Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for you.
Yeah.
A sidebar on that, I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn who then went to my website and just started calling me. I'm like, bro, just because we're connected on LinkedIn does not mean you should be blowing me up. But the good thing is I'm going to grow my coaching business by 10 to 20%. So that's good. So I was glad to hear that. Thank you for reaching out to me. All right, let's switch to tactics for a second. What about the phrase, always be closing? Should you always be closing?
I hate that phrase.
Okay, let's have a talk about it, because that's all you hear is always be closing, right?
It's just, what it reminds me of is someone's going to manipulate me to get me to say yes. And I believe you can either be a transaction seller or a relationship seller. And when you build the relationships, that's when the money follows, right? That's when you get the referrals and whatnot. So I think about always be curious.
Yeah.
Because curiosity and resistance cannot coexist.
Talk about that some more. Curious about who they are, about their company, about the problems you're solving, all of that. Just keep on learning and learning and learning. And that lowers their guard. Interesting. Always be closing. Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really similar to Tony. That sort of I bristle against that sort of really cheesy thing. I just don't really like cliches, and I've been in enough like boiler room style sales environments where people are like hitting gongs and ringing bells every time they win something. So I tend to reject that. But also we're both relationship sellers, so we prefer to know people really well, to get to know them and their business and their budgets, and so you really can't. I mean, at some point, when it's time to close, you just ask a simple question because you've done all of the legwork and you've done all of the education that you can do, and so I think it's passe. It's an old style of selling.
Yeah. Let's talk about relationship selling though for a second, because you mentioned there's a clear distinction: relationship selling, transactional selling. How long are you building a relationship until you get the sale? As long as it takes, or is there a methodology on how you build the relationship and what to expect if you're going down that path?
Well, I have a methodology that I codified at the end of last year called Relationship Building at Scale, and then I had been rolling it out to like software development firms and a lot of service-based companies, and then it had a stupendous opportunity during COVID to get tested, and it came out beautifully. People that were using, were focused on building relationships through a system in March didn't take a dip. And folks who adopted it in the middle of whatever 2020 is are now back to pre-COVID levels, because the idea that you are focused instead on pitching and more on building trust and building a relationship is really powerful. And so you don't need to pick up the phone and do a bajillion cold calls. You need to pick up the phone and call now the people that you have laid groundwork for, and it just becomes and it's more fun.
Yeah, get to know people.
Absolutely.
Is that a system? Is that a course? Is that a book? Is that a speech? Tell us about what the system is.
Actually, I made it into a course this year. I still teach it to my private clients. But it's been really fun to roll out. And
so you're teaching people relationship selling as well, and you oversee a very large sales organization. How many folks are you managing?
Oh, 18 going to be right now.
Okay, so to teach 18 people at once relationship selling, how do you get their head around it?
It breaks down to 3 parts. Number 1, you got to build trust, or actually build credibility first. Mm-hmm. Then you got to build trust, and then you got influence.
Influence, okay. Credibility, we've talked about that.
Yep.
Trust, how are you building trust?
By asking questions.
Okay, and then influence, how are you building influence?
By sharing with the prospect what they told you, what's important to them.
Yeah.
So it's like, I look at the third portion of that, it's like you're almost like reviewing movies.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's what I heard you say, because people want to be heard. Like business owners, they're going all day long. Very rarely do they get a chance to actually sit down and actually talk.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make it about you as much as I possibly can. Ask you the questions about your business. There is a flow to it, right? I want to understand your situation, the problems you have and whatnot. And then, if I feel that I found some areas where I can add value to your business, that's when I switch to be the influencer then.
Yeah. So Ashley has a course. Do you have a system that you run people through, an entire training system?
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Because I think when you have a process, you have something to manage. That's where it becomes an art and a science. Hey, did you do this? Like, for example, one of the first things I talk about is you got to build rapport first. Nothing happens unless rapport is built.
Yeah.
And then I have them establish credibility. And then they go ahead and figure out the current situation. For example, if you were looking at getting another, cable company, okay? So tell me how you guys start with your current company right now. Okay, what would that process look like? I want to really get an understanding of your world first.
So I'd love to learn your process. I'd love to take your course, but I want to make sure that we stay on point here, how to get to the close. So let's talk tactically for a second. From your experience and from what you teach and coach people on, what are some of the generic buying signs, or what are some things that we should be looking for to think, oh, hey, I might be able to make a sale here. And this might be super basic for you, but for someone like me, it's like, oh, I never thought to look for that.
Yeah, it's logistic questions. So anything that would solidify price, anything that would solidify time frame, how would we work together in a very specific way questions. Those all signal, okay, I'm ready to buy. And one of the things that I find as a common issue for clients is that they'll get stuck in providing information and not have a clear vehicle for, okay, now we sign contracts. And so what I counsel people to say is something really simple, and that tends to be, listen, from my perspective, it sounds like the next step is to get contracts drawn up. Is that where you are too, or do we still have some I's to dot and T's to cross? That last part, of course, is a little negotiable, but something that says, listen, I think we're done. Should I get contracts out? Or if I'm going to save space in November for you in my client load, we should probably know that now. Otherwise, we're looking for December. Is a nice lead into, okay, when are we going to work together?
But what refreshing self-advocacy. You were talking about self-advocacy. That's a way to say, I think we're good here. Let's make this happen. And I would imagine a client's like, yeah. I mean, the right client is going to know that now's the time to stop talking and let's sign a deal. So cutting off the questions and getting out of negotiation mode, is that the type of mode that you would put someone through? It's time to sign the contract?
Yeah. I will set the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. I'll give them a flow of what the appointment's going to look like.
Okay.
So, for example, I'd say, hey, Pat, I'm glad that we've invested our time together today. I never say thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Because my time is just as valuable as your time.
Wait. Say that again. Say what you just said again.
That's my flow.
No, that was good. Now tell me that again, because that's something that not a lot of people think about. Goes back to self-advocacy. You don't thank people for their time because your time is just as valuable as theirs.
Right. So I tell them, thank you for investing your time.
Nice.
Because we're both making an investment.
Right.
Right. And then I'll tell them, okay, so what I want to do is first I'll tell you a little bit about our company. I have some questions to get a better understanding of your business. And then I will go ahead and rehash some of the things you share with me and see if we can come up with a solution together. And we come to an agreement with that. It's going to be simple for you to get started with us. Or we'll get done at the end and say, you know what, this is not for me. I'm going to put that up front with you. That way there's an expectation at the end when we made that natural progression. Okay, now it's going to be time.
Yeah, and setting that agenda at the start of the meeting lets them know it's coming,
right,
and it doesn't feel like you're rushing to close.
And sometimes what they'll say to you, well, I'm not doing anything today. That's okay. But I'm going to put it out there, knowing that I've helped people in the past. Even if you haven't helped people in the past, I still want to set that agenda.
Yeah. I don't want to miss the opportunity to ask you two about this topic because it's something that a lot of people struggle with, negotiating the price. If the price is supposed to be $100, that's what you're asking for. How do you just present the price to someone, and if they start pushing back, how do you handle it?
Well, there are a couple of different ways. So I tend not to negotiate on price. Most of the price points and the value points that I sell in are not, none of my clients are ever going to be the cheapest. And one of the things to be aware of is that we sell like we buy. So if you are, for instance, maybe me, if you are a nice Midwestern woman who, if you compliment this scarf, I am 400% likely to tell you how much it costs and how much I got it on sale. Because I love a good deal. And I have to be really aware of that because my buyer may not be price driven. Actually, I hope my buyer is not price driven. I really want to sell to people who understand what Sharper Image used to be in the 90s. That was absolutely the top of the line and you paid more for it. And price can be a signal of value. But if you believe that your buyer is really wanting to get the lower price, you'll believe that is what the objection is all along. I think you should be talking about budget ahead of time too, so that you have an idea that, listen, there's going to be some pushback on this price, and if you have been in business for a minute, you'll have a clear idea of what the market will bear for your service, and so it would be really important when someone pushes back on $100 that you say, okay, well then I have included all of this in the package, and if you don't need all of that, let's take something out. What is least important to you so we can take something out and I can adjust the price accordingly?
Yeah, and that sets the table in advance. So like if you get to the price and they're not down with it, maybe you didn't qualify them correctly throughout the process.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying? Mm-hmm. So what about handling price objections? Because they happen. How do you handle price objections?
First
like that
off,
master class right
like
there?
Totally. I wanted to go ahead and clap.
Yeah, right?
When you said, Ashley, people a lot of times will sell how they buy. It's so true. If you're getting that price objection a lot, I think you need to look in the mirror going, you buy a lot on price, right? Again, it's about putting it up front. Let me back up 2 steps here. Price is only an issue when value is absent. And by the time I get down to the end of my appointment, I literally have a goal to go ahead and find 7 or 8 different ways I can help them. When I used to do my first door-to-door sales job, those are Kirby sales vacuums. They were Kirby's.
Wow.
I remember when I applied for it, I was becoming this manager trainee, walked in the first day of training, and there's this vacuum in the middle of the floor. I'm like, what's that? Oh, you're selling that. That's a vacuum. It's a home cleaning system. But they had a mission to pull out 100 dirt pads. If you could pull out 100 dirt pads, you built enough value in that. So first, to get over the price objection, call a spade what it is. I'll tell people right up front, you've been in business for a while, Pat. You know that price is the easiest thing we all do. And you know it's a lot more than just price. Or I'll say something like, I'm not the highest, nor am I the lowest, but I'm going to treat you fair. And most people say, okay, all right.
We talked about buying signs. We talked about moving to the close. We talked about negotiating price. Because I don't know what I'm talking about, am I missing a step here to get to the close? Because this episode, the art of the close, is there anything else that an expert like yourselves would be looking for or listening for that maybe I'm not trained to be listening for that would be helpful for the viewer?
Oh, that's a really rich question. One of the things that maybe Tony did but he didn't call out that I would love to call out is that you have to give people the mechanism to tell you no. And because that's what people are uncomfortable with. You know, they'll when you hear of like a potential client ghosting you, it's usually because you didn't give them the tools that they needed to reject you. And so a lot of times in setting up an agenda, I'll say something like, and so, you know, honestly, at the end, I'm going to ask you if you're in. I hope that you are. I'm pretty jazzed about it. But I hope if you're not, you and I have a friendship enough that we can get past it. So I hope you'll feel really comfortable telling me no if this isn't for you, because I really want it to be perfect. And if you have set it up that way, that's a really lovely thing to do. Also, I would say, you know, price in particular is it's stupid easy to sell on price. Right. And Tony and I are very, very high-end salespeople. And if we're selling on price, you don't need a high-end salesperson. You just need like great SEO and an okay website. So if you're, so I've actually given private clients this advice twice in the last, let's say, month. But if your salespeople can't sell on value, they can't earn their keep. So, but I love the process of understanding someone's whole motivation and someone's whole business case for needing help, needing services, needing advice. So I think it's all great.
From a relationship selling point of view, authentically and personally giving them the grace of how to say no, but we still have a relationship, that's some LeBron James stuff there. That's unbelievable. So how do you go about doing that? Do you give them that opportunity as a part of your discussion?
Absolutely. Salespeople don't want to be told no, but then that's why they waste a lot of time on trying to chase that yes. Hey, if I need to cut bait, I'm going to cut bait. I'm out of here. You know, it's like when you're dating, you're stringing people along, right? Oh, you know, no, just tell me.
Yeah.
And I think that gives people permission to do it, to also keep that relationship with you. Because it may not be today, but maybe tomorrow. And when it comes to closing, I think in terms of, it's not an event. It's like a series of steps that gets along the way. And it goes back to building that relationship. It might take you, 8, 12, 15 times to go ahead and, have them say yes to you. But if you did a good job in, setting the agenda, asking questions, it's a natural progression. There should be going, this makes sense. If someone says, I think about it, it's because of one of two things. Either they're not interested or they don't understand. And that's on me. And there was literally a time once, I had a top salesperson who was frustrated because he said to me, I was going to save them $5,000, but they wouldn't come on board with me on their costs for our services. I'm like, I go, is this really bugging you? He goes, yeah, I stayed up all night. Like, just why would you throw $5,000 out the door? I go, call him up and tell him that. He goes, what? Tell him that you feel bad, that you probably didn't do your job, and that something is misunderstood. He literally called them up right after that phone call. He says, listen, I was staying up all night long. I just couldn't understand why you wouldn't come forward. I feel like I didn't do something in my job. And the business owner literally said, I just don't understand how you arrived at that number. He went back there that day, and they signed up.
This episode's all about closing. This has been a great conversation. I wish we could keep going. We're running out of time. Any final thoughts on the concept of getting someone from interested to close that maybe we haven't covered? Because the stuff that's been shared has been great, but anything else you want to make sure that our viewer gets a chance to hear?
Sure. I'm really big on quiet persistence. So I won't beat down your door, but you will for sure get pings from me, an article occasionally, and I think that stuff is really important to shepherding a deal along, and especially on, Tony and I are building relationships over potentially the course of years, and especially on larger enterprise deals, they can take a whole quarter or two to get into place, and working through all of those little kinks can be a challenge, but one worth taking. But being persistent enough in a way that is still charming is sort of the ticket.
Yeah, well, it just bleeds out of you, right? Just talking with you, it's like just your personality just flows.
Stop,
well, it's true. So let's talk about that relationship. I just want to follow up for one thing. If someone's in your universe, someone that's maybe a prospect, out of 5 times you're reaching out to them, how many times are you reaching out to them without asking for anything? You're just adding value, building the relationship. Is it the majority of the time, every time? Like, what's the philosophy when it comes to building that relationship?
Well, I have, so let's say it's probably 5 or 6 times that I will give value before I ask for something. And I have all sorts of things in my back pocket for what I can use to build that relationship. I speak at conferences frequently, so I invite people. I'll get tickets to those conferences, and I'll say, hey, you might be interested in this. That's a really easy one. Something, and it depends on who they are, too. Occasionally, an encouraging email with an amusing GIF is like the way to go, and sometimes that's completely inappropriate. I invite people in on nonprofit work that I do. I do a lot of work with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, for instance. And as part of that, actually, you can nominate someone for Man or Woman of the Year, and I do that very frequently as a way to, listen, this is about the nicest thing ever. I'm going to nominate you for Man of the Year. And even if you tell me no, it's still a win. I've still gotten in front of you and said something incredibly flattering and helped the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
Win, win, win.
Win, 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 win.
Tony, last word. Anything that we've not covered about closing and the art of the close that you want to make sure our viewer hears?
The fortune is in the follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
You continue to follow through, to build that relationship, and even thank them for a no. And what I mean by that is the handwritten thank you card. Even if they tell you no, write a thank you card out to them, because they'll remember that. And it shows to them that you really want to build that relationship.
It's not every day that you flip on YouTube and make money, but you two made our people money today. Tony, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for having
Pat.
us, Pat.
Thanks to Tony and Ashley for sitting down on YG Roundtable, built by Max Weiss and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. YG Roundtable, built by Max Weiss, is YG TV's place to explore issues facing the business community and learn from subject matter experts who stand out in their field. If you've got an idea for an episode or you'd like to appear as a panelist, drop us a note on our website, younggunsmovement.com. And for more great content shaking up the business industry, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. A big thanks to Ashley and Tony for being on the show today.